All right. Thank you, Paul. So I've got a lot to talk about and not a lot of time to do it. So we're going to jump right in. And Mikey's nodding his head because he knows that I have a lot to talk about. So what we're going to talk about is our brand new offering called Profound API. It was officially released on Friday. So this is the absolute freshest of offerings from Profound Logic. And it's my baby. I can't claim I wrote it, but I am the product owner of it. And I'm the one that kind of spearheaded the effort to build this product. So if we get into the specifics, I'm not going to do many slides. I hate slides, but we're going to do a quick one here, though. So the idea behind Profound API is we've taken the idea of API on IBMI, or honestly on any type of platform, and we decided to simplify it. So it is, as the slide says here, it is designed from the ground up to make creating, managing, and deploying API simple. That's the mission statement of Profound API. So what does that mean? It means we're going to be able to create API without writing a single line of code. We're going to be able to expose our existing IBMI resources, whether they be programs, sub-procedures, data areas, DB2 data. All of that is going to be easily accessible as API. We're going to be able to access not only our IBMI resources, but we're going to be able to consume other API that are outside of IBMI. We're going to be able to reach out to other databases. The reality is while our core systems are most likely running on IBMI, we likely have other systems in our enterprise, and we need to be able to actually integrate with those systems, and this is going to allow us to do that. We're going to be able to deploy these API very simply. If you can click save, you can deploy an API, and not to mention, it's going to document it for us. I know all of you are just great at writing documentation about your applications. Actually, I know you won't do it. Much like Paul said, you wouldn't go and write the service program for his scalar functions. Developers are terrible at documenting what we've done. Profound API just handles it for you. You don't have to do the documentation. And again, API is a new concept for a lot of shops. So we have things like our performance dashboard that's going to actually give you a place to go and take a look and try to figure out, is my API server running well? Are my APIs performing well? All of that's been simplified so that you don't have to think about it. So that's enough PowerPoint for now. Let's actually jump in and take a look at this stuff, because it's all about the stuff. I'm going to flip something over here on my other screen so I can monitor it, because I actually have some things running over here just to build some performance data. So Profound API is built on top of Profound.js, our Node.js solution for IBMI. So it is an entirely Node solution. All of the tooling runs in your browser. There are no fat clients to have to deal with. If you've got a web browser, you can log into Profound API and start building API. So let's take a quick look at what creating an API could be. Let's just say I have some data on my IBMI sitting out in DB2. And let's say, you know what, my .NET team called and said, hey, we want to access that data, but I don't want to give them direct access to my database. I'd like to give them an API layer to interface with. Not a problem. So I'm inside of our IDE here. I can switch over to my database tab, and you'll see all of the database connections I have configured here. You'll see I'm running on IBMI right now. So I have my local IBMI instance. I could also have remote IBMI instances. You'll also notice I have a MariaDB instance configured running out in AWS, and I have a SQL Server and Azure configured here too, so we can talk to anything. But let's just hop down and let's take a look. And let's look at a PO detail file. Great. So I need an API layer for this table. Okay, I'm going to right click on that table. I'm going to choose Build API. Okay, we're done. It's gone out, it's retrieved all of the information about this table, and it has built a full API layer for this table. And I'm going to move these cameras out of my way. So you'll see I have a list of routes here. So I have an API called PO details to retrieve the list of all of the detail records. It also has parameters that are set up here. You can see you can put in a selection or a filter, all of those things to narrow that. Obviously, you don't want to retrieve a 1,000,000 row table, although technically it will let you. Or I have a route here to retrieve one. So I can use PO details and pass the RRN as the name of the column in this table. So I can pass that in as part of my path and retrieve that single one. I have add, I have update, I have delete, all of the different API that I might need to interact with this table. So all I need to do at this point, I mean, obviously there's more I could do, but all I need to do at this point is just click save. Give it a name. I'll just leave it at the default. It named it after the detail file. Puts it in a file called podetails.api.json. So obviously it's a JSON file. Save it. It's deployed. At this point, these API are deployed on this server, my test server that I'm running on. If I want to test them, I can come right here in my IDE to my test tab here and give it a spin. This particular one, I don't even know an RRN number, so we'll guess. There it is. I guess I didn't choose one with data. Let's try one. Do we have an RRN of one? No, we don't. So I guess we can do this then. Let's go get a list. And limit me to 10. Perfect. But I don't have to have extra tooling to do this testing and to interact with these API. It's all right here. So I have an RRN of 1001. Perfect. So I can go to get one. We can tell it I want 1001. There we have it. There's my data. Again, I haven't written a single line of code. I've just pointed and clicked my way through this. And what's really cool is that you also will notice here that even in our testing tab, let's say you want to test this from a command line. Here's the curl command to go out and run tests against this. Or if I want to run this in the browser, well, here's the URL. I can just copy it, drop it in a tab, and there it is. So no matter what your testing tools that you like to use, you can get the information you need to be able to do those tests. Or you can just use the testing tab that's built right here into the IDE. So just to give you a quick overview of the different functions we have in here, you'll notice obviously we had our database tab and our file listing here. This is from my IFS on my IBMI at this point. And let me, on the bottom here, you'll see I have a place to define my input parameters and my output. Again, it's all point and click. If I needed a new parameter, all I need to do is choose to add one, give it a data type, and fill out the basic information about what it is. I have all these routes that are within this one JSON file. So I can create new routes, delete routes, deprecate routes. You'll notice if we take a look at the general info, there's all kinds of ways to categorize and write descriptions about these API. I mentioned that it self-documents. It does. All you have to do is just fill in the fields and the forms here that the tool gives you. CORS. Don't worry about CORS. We've got that taken care of by default here. If for some reason you don't want it turned on, turn it off. You can deprecate and disable API. All of these things can be done without having to restart an API server. It's just a JSON file, which means that when you get ready to deploy these things into production, it's just a JSON file. So whatever your DevOps strategy is, if it's just typical IBMI change management, well, can it handle an IFS file? Then it can move it to production. If you have a more sophisticated DevOps strategy, you're using Git or Jenkins, all of the Ansible, all of those things. If you have a really automated, continuous integration, continuous deployment environment, it's a JSON file. All you have to do is get the new JSON into the production environment, and the server will pick that up, and those API are now deployed. So we have a lot of baked in functionality there, so you just don't have to worry about it. Also, you'll notice here in the center, that's where the magic happens. Profound API uses our new low code development strategy. So everything inside of here is done with low code. I'm not going to use this one as our example because I have some more interesting ones. So let's say we wanted to call an RPG program. It's fine. I don't have to know how to code that in Node.js to make it happen. All I need to do is come here, and you'll see I have a step here that I've called call IBMI program. I'm not really creative with the names, but I can show you here. If we go to edit, I'm just answering questions. All right, what do I want to do? Well, I want to call an IBMI program. All right, where is it? So here it is. All right, give me the parameter listing. All right, well, the first one's a packed decimal. It's 9 and 0, and I'm going to pull the value that I pass in from my input parameters. I had one called claim ID, so that's what I want. If I were capturing data from this parameter, like in the ones here, I'll use the API output property, and in this case, I'm just dropping them in output parameters. You can see I have an output parameter called description and date and county. But all I have to do is just describe the interface to this RPG program or sub-procedure if that's what we want to do. You'll notice the data types. We have all of the typical IBMI data types, including data structures, dates and times, all of those things. So you don't have to worry about data translation and formatting them properly for the RPG program to be able to understand them. All of that's handled. So I have call the RPG program. I have an additional step here where I am just setting some property values for my output. I had some output parameters here that were not part of the original, that were not part of the return values from the program. So for example, I set a status success to true. In demoing this previously, I created one called Bob. It's not there anymore, but I'm putting was here in there. Whatever it is you'd like to do, you can do all of that without a single line of code. And again, we can come here and test that. And there we have our response from our RPG program. Now we can get really complicated with this if we want. I say complicated, it's really not that complicated. I have a single API here where we're calling that RPG program. I'm retrieving some data from, it says MySQL, it's actually from MariaDB, running in AWS. And then I'm going to retrieve some DB2 data, again, from my IBMI. And then I'm going to take the output that I got from those things and stick all of that into my output parameters here for this API. It's really just a matter of just adding steps and retrieving the data I want. So again, the same program call we had before. I want to retrieve some data from AWS. It's not a problem. All I need to do is say I need a set of database records. Which database do I want to access? I have a list of all of the different connections that I have configured. All right, what columns? All I have to do is check boxes. All right, what about my selection criteria? Great. Again, I'm checking boxes, and I can do conditions with ands and ors. I can do equals, greater than. Again, I'm writing absolutely no code here. Parameter values, what do we want them to be? All right, well, I hard coded this one to 0, so I want, I only want a result if I have, more than one record, or at least one record. My input parameter gets plugged into our CM number field there. It's all very straightforward. And then what do I want to do with the records when I retrieve them? Sticking them in a work variable. And work variables are just temporary variables within this API. I can create them to be arrays or variables, whatever I want them to be. I can just stick things into them to be used later. The same process with DB2. It's just instead of connecting to our AWS server, in this case, I'm just the default database. I'm running on IBMI, so right now my default database is configured to the local IBMI. So, and then in the last step here, I'm just grabbing all of that data that I put into the work variables and putting them into our API output. So again, I've built an API that's calling an RPG program, retrieving data from the cloud running in AWS, retrieving DB2 data from my IBM I. I could even add another step if I wanted to, although we don't really have time right now, to go out and retrieve some data, say from, I don't know, a SQL Server running locally, or maybe it's running in Azure. Who cares? It can all be pulled into one API and we can run it right here. So if we take a look, I can go to my test tab again and let's just run it. So let's look for 1827. Pretty sure there's data for that one. There we are, ran really quick. You can see here that I have my response with all of my data coming from the various places. So again, the idea here is you know your systems, you know where your data resides, you know where all of these resources are. We're just giving you a tool to be able to pull them all together very easily. You don't have to be an API expert. You don't have to be a Node.js developer even. All you need to do is be able to answer questions, and we can help you build the API layer that you need for your applications. So that's a quick run through. Now, obviously, we have some other things and we won't run them, but I mean, for example, I have this here to show that the process can be more complicated. So this particular example, we're actually bringing in a list. You can see here in our input parameters that this actually has a really complicated structure that comes in as the list. And some of these things are arrays. In fact, you'll see here where it says multiple, all of these things are arrays. So we are, here you'll see process primary list. That step is to process a list. So basically that's a loop. So we have loops, we have conditions, we have all of those in this low code environment so that we can build whatever the logic is for this API and have it call programs, go out and retrieve data, process the data that was brought in, manipulate it. All of those things can be done within this point and click environment, and then we can expose that as an API very quickly. So that's a quick overview of the API portion. I know I don't have a ton of time, but there's more to it than this. This is a very holistic solution. So not only can we create and deploy these API very easily, we've also tried to make sure that all of the things that you're going to need for a proper API layer are taken care of. So if I come to my API options, the first thing we'll take a look at is our API Explorer. So I mentioned that we developers are so great at documentation, right? Well, this is, again, as I mentioned, this is going to take care of it for us. So all of the API that I have on this server has pulled all of those description and label fields out of the forms that we filled out, and has gone ahead and built a documentation site for us. So we can come in, we can take a look. Here's all of the information about this particular API, even the ability to test it right here in the documentation page. So we can actually run a test even within the documentation, see the output and all of the things that we filled out. These API are categorized based on the category fields, so we can, of course, move our way around to find specific API if we want. We can search anything that has, for example, claim. I know I would need an API that has something to do with claim. All right, well, here are our APIs that have the word claim somewhere in their documentation. We can jump around and find what we need. This is all Swagger based, or open API, if you will. So not only can I come in and find this stuff, let's say you're going to be consuming this from, let's say .NET, and let's say you have some tooling that can import a Swagger document to scaffold out your API interface. Well, just click this link right here. Here's your Swagger document. You can just give the URL to the Swagger document to whoever's going to be consuming your API, and they can then take that and use it. So again, easy to do documentation. You don't even have to think about it. All you have to do is fill in the descriptions as you're developing. The last piece, we're running an API server on IBM I. That's something new. it's based on Node.js. So again, that's something for some shops that is going to be very new. So, how do we know that it's running well? How do we know that, this isn't eating my system alive? How do I go and find out if there are errors with my API? Well, again, we thought of that. So if we take a look at our API dashboard, and you'll see that there's a ton of data here. I've actually, this whole time we've been doing this demo, you'll see here, I've actually got Postman hammering away at this API server while we're doing the demo. I know I like to live dangerously, but the point being, I wanted real data for us to see while we're taking a look at the dashboard. So in the last 2 hours, roughly, I've actually hit this server with 35,000 requests. Now, this is just a default install on an IBM I. I haven't done any tuning. This is straight out of the box. It's performing quite well. You probably wouldn't have even noticed any slowness while we were doing the demonstration. We're processing about 7 requests per second. I intentionally put some errors in earlier so that we can see that it does show us specifically how many errors we've had. We can take a look at our requests and over the last 60 minutes. You can see what we're processing. We can see CPU usage over the last hour. We can see current CPU usage, current memory usage, all of that here just on the summary view. And then we have tabs with all sorts of different metrics for us. So we can take a look at requests by method. We can get into errors. What kind of errors are we getting? Well, when I made these errors, I just broke the server basically on purpose. So we got status 500 errors, actual server errors. We can actually take a look at a list of the errors. So not only do I know the errors happened, now I can come in and say, okay, well, what happened? Well, here we can actually expand this, and I have all of the information about the call that caused the error. I know exactly the parameters, I have the bodies, the headers, everything. So I can actually go and recreate this and try to figure out what happened. We can get into long-running requests. Again, I have some things that had errors on purpose, so obviously they ran really long. But I can take a look at this and try to find those API that just seem to take a little longer than they should. Maybe it's the parameters that are being passed, but I can find that information out right here in the dashboard. Rates and durations, we can take a look at trends here as far as how many requests we're getting per minute, per second, etc. Payloads, how much data are we sending back and forth? API calls. So this is a list of all of our routes, and we can take a look. For example, this claim cost. The one that I'm hitting really hard here is the one that's actually talking to multiple databases and calling an RPG program. So in the last 2 hours, I've called that almost 16,000 times. Got one currently processing. Oh, I guess it finished. I've had 12 errors. Again, I made those happen, but I can see all the information about this API and what it's doing. I can even click on it and get specific information about this API and take a look at, response sizes, handle times. Right now, it's averaging 292 milliseconds every time this gets called. We can get to, this one gets called the most, so we can see how many requests, AppDex scores. Errors, we have a 0.02% error rate, pretty good. Obviously you want it to be 0, but if you got to have an error rate, hundredths of a percent is probably pretty good. But again, all of this has already been taken care of. It's all here so that you don't have to be an expert. Your admin doesn't have to be an expert to go in and just look and see how's it doing. It's all been summarized right here so that we can hop in and take a quick look. Now, I had not planned to field questions during this break, so I think what we'll do at this point is I will switch back over to my PowerPoint, and I'll just tell you where to get more information. So I have a whole series of videos that I've done about Profound API that's available on our YouTube channel. You can go out to Profound Logic TV on YouTube, and you can find out more. Obviously, our website has information. You can go to profoundlogic.com/API. You can contact sales if you'd like for someone to walk you through this. If you need to talk cost, if you need to set up a demo, sales@profoundlogic.com. They can set you up with one of either myself or one of my solutions architects like Mikey. And we can walk you through this and see if it's the right solution for you.